Have you ever wondered why some communities feel magnetic? They feel like magic. It's where people show up and they actually invest in each other and stay, and others don't. In a world where so many of us feel like we're disconnected, despite being constantly connected on our phones and every other way that you can imagine possible, what really creates the glue that brings us all together? Charles Vogel is an acclaimed author. He is a keynote speaker. He's an advisor to global leaders, and he is possibly, and if you see that I'm getting like super excited as I'm talking to you, it's just because of what I'm about to tell you, which is he might possibly be best known for this book. There's a new version of it out called The Art of Community. And if you love community and bringing people together, and I know a lot of the audience here in Association Chat does, then you probably have read this, you're aware of it, you've wanted to read it, something like that. His work draws from more than 3,000 years of spiritual traditions and applies that wisdom, to today's most pressing leadership challenges. And we have some challenges, don't we? So he is amazing. I feel very lucky that he's here to join us today. And here we have Charles Vogel. Charles, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's always exciting to talk to someone excited to talk to me.
I mean, I have to say, I admire so much the principles that you write about in The Art of Community. I was super excited to see that there's this new edition out, and to have the chance to talk to you about that new edition, what's changed. There's like 25% new content. What is it? I want to get into all of that here with you today, and to talk even more about what you think, what you see about the way that people connect today that may be sort of, experiencing some challenges based on what's going on in our society. So to get started and to give people a little bit of context about you, I thought that we might go into talking a little bit about your own personal story, because I know that it's not necessarily a traditional path to begin looking at spiritual traditions and then working on community and teaching community to others. And so let's get into that. How did you get here?
Well, the quick version for the purpose of this conversation is let's go back when I finished undergraduate school and I had a degree and I wanted to make a difference in the world, but I didn't know how to do that. And of course, the world says, go get a job. And that didn't sound really exciting. One of the adventures I had is I volunteered full time in a radical homeless shelter in Southern California. It's called the Catholic Worker. And one of the things that made the Catholic Worker radical is that we who were volunteering would actually invite in people who were homeless into the house, because that was a safe place to stay, consistent with Christian teaching. And in that place, the reality of dealing with homelessness in America is there's addiction, mental health issues, and then, of course, medical challenges that can be really disturbing. And none of us could do that except we work together. But no person could minister to all these sometimes dangerous challenges if you do it by yourself. And that really sat with me, that the only reason any of us can do this is we're doing it together. Subsequent to that, I served in the U.S. Peace Corps in northern Zambia, and I was there during the famous AIDS epidemic. And there, I was really struck when living in a village of 150 families where 1/3 of the year was called the hunger season. But if you lived in the village, you would always be taken care of. And that's because nobody would let somebody go hungry if they had food. And so I was introduced to a world so different than where I was living in California, where everybody knew my name and everybody was looking out for me. And there are dark sides and bright sides to that, but nonetheless, it was a startling, change for me to go into culture. Came back to the United States, started making a film that would go on to become a PBS film about genocide survivors. And when I started, I literally didn't know how to turn on a camera. Certainly didn't have a rich uncle to pay for the film. So I just had to start fundraising. And I had mentors teach me how I had to bring people together who shared values and purpose to create a project much bigger than me. And it was in that process that someone explained to me that I had been using a Superman strategy of trying to do everything well. And that had what caused the burnout and the cynicism that I had been developed. And they taught me that if I wanted to be good at what I was doing and have international impact, what I needed to be good at was inviting people together around shared values and purpose to work together. Well, subsequent to that, I went to graduate school to study religion, philosophy, and ethics. And while I was there, I remember being stunned sitting in class, learning about spiritual traditions that have been so successful bringing people together around shared values and purpose for 1,000 years, that I was aware that I could stand up in that classroom, literally go outside and go find people in the world continuing to gather around those traditions. And I thought that was deeply inspiring. So here I was, I finished that degree, and I didn't want to be a PBS genocide filmmaker anymore. I wasn't going to go back to sub-Saharan Africa and work on human rights issues. And I certainly didn't want to get ordained. So I followed my wife to California and started just talking to people to find out who's doing what and how I could contribute to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
One of those lunches I had was a guy named Kevin Lynn. Kevin had recently started a company that's now called Twitch. And back then he shared that they only had 50 million members at the time. And Kevin explained how what he really wanted to do better was knit together the people who were showing up on the Twitch platform. Wow. He didn't say this because he thought I would solve it. He didn't say this because he knew that I had better wisdom. He was just talking about challenges he was facing. Well, in that moment at that lunch, my head almost exploded with all the ideas I wanted to share with Kevin. And so I went home to write what I thought was going to be a 10-page paper, put it on the internet, offer it to Kevin to build his global tech company. And it turned out I had so much more to say, because that's when I discovered that I had spent 15 to 20 years before that lunch practicing, learning, being coached by mentors, and of course, looking at traditions that were successful in knitting together relationships over shared values and purpose, even through sometimes existentially threatening times. So I kept writing. I was surprised when it was book length. I was surprised when the first publisher wanted to publish it. I was surprised when it was published, it won an award. And quite frankly, I'm surprised now that it's gone around the world and we're talking about the second edition coming out.
Yeah.
Ride.
I can't believe it. And actually thinking about the Twitch story, like moving from Twitch and thinking about associations and thinking about, when you're looking at bringing how groups have come together and why they've come together for so long. And then, of course, you're thinking about what in the United States for sure. I know it's worldwide, but in the United States for sure right now, there's been this ongoing situation where we're feeling increasingly divided, even though we have a million different ways to get together. It's kind of wild to think that there could be people who are connecting better through community on Twitch than through their communities in associations or something like that. And so I find it fascinating to be at this point where you have so much insight into how to bring people together and what really seems to work. And the fact that we still are so divided, it must be incredibly frustrating for you on an ongoing basis, because you're like, I have some answers, guys. I have some things that could help. Do you ever get frustrated with this?
The frustration is not the word that I use. There's definitely a longing. My work is based on very long-standing, time-tested ideas and principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think of my work as simply distilling them and sharing wisdom that we've all known for untold generations. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kiki, the book, landed for you, is when you read what I wrote, presumably everything you came across, you thought, of course, that's true. Yeah. Of course, my grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents have been using all these ideas in that book, and we've just forgotten them. We're just not using them. And so there's a longing for me to go out and shout, could we please put down the distractions, these new, obviously failing notions of what people need to do or want to do when they come together, and just go back to what we were doing in the 1500s and the 1300s and the 1200s, not everything, obviously, but these principles, and knit together those relationships that have been serving our families for millennia.